This is the Iron Sharpens Iron Movement, sharing insights into the power of people-centric leading.
Hi, this is Jim, and today we welcome to our tribe a leadership development coach committed to helping millennial executives become game-changing leaders. He's the author of 6 Anchors to Overcome Stress and Anxiety and Become a Fulfilled Leader. This is David Hill. Iron Sharpens Iron Movement is brought to you by N2 Growth, a leader in executive search, leadership development, and talent management. We find and develop the world's best leaders. Learn more about our practice by visiting us at n2growth.com or click on the link in the show notes of this podcast. David, welcome to the Iron Sharpens Iron Movement. We're really excited to have you here today. And, I concentrate a lot on C-suite executives and worldwide subject matter experts. And we're not going to fail the audience again today. But one of the things that's really interesting is you proudly define yourself as a millennial leader. And I think this is going to be exciting perspectives for us to all dive in today. So welcome to the tribe, David.
Yeah, it's really good to be here, Jim.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm really excited to get into your head about how your coaching practice has been, how you feel that you have something to bring to the table to coach fellow millennial leaders, and you've been very successful in your career so far. One of the things that attracted me to you is you were not afraid to talk about how the millennial generation is really affected by a high sense of burnout. They're quite burned out, they're overworked, they're overwhelmed, kind of can never turn anything off. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a huge problem right now with millennials in terms of if you just look at the generation themselves. We have the highest rate of depression, we have the highest rate of anxiety, stress, an increasing rate of suicides as well. And there's definitely a pattern or a trend here that's just only going to keep going up. And I think that a lot of that has to do with how we are as a generation, our beliefs, our values, and there is a really big dissonance and conflict with just the workspace, especially in corporate right now. That causes a lot of just negativity towards just how they feel, and they're not making an impact. They feel like they need to keep working to find that fulfillment, or maybe to gain more insight on why they feel that the way that they do, and so to keep focusing on the solutions, quote unquote, that isn't really bringing them any relief in the sense of the burnout, and so. It's really up to leadership to really help the millennials navigate that burnout. And so, my focus is really working with millennial leaders and executives right now, because we are at a pivotal point where, currently there's about 35% of the workforce are millennials, but then 5 years from now, it's going to be about 75%. So there's going to be an inevitable shift in terms of handing the baton down to our generation to lead. And so if we don't learn what I call real leadership skills and how to have a different approach, we're just going to keep that trend going with not even just our generation, but Generation Z or whatever generation keeps coming after us.
So do you feel, are you really talking about, it's not just the individual, the generation, it's the culture of the company? Do you believe that it's the corporate culture that's applying these pressures without understanding the generational mix that is just really magnifying the issue? Or is it just the generation, and as they work as a society, they can't actually fit into the current corporate structure? Which one's kind of at a greater fault, or how does that conflict work, and which way are you really putting your focus on?
I think what you spoke with the latter. I think I think we label it as a generational problem, but when in reality, it's really a human, how we treat each other problem. I think that how corporate is set up right now, it's really all about growth and profit over people. I think that there's a slight shift towards people over profit now, but I don't think that corporate is really taking that step towards that enough. And I think that that's where the gap is as well. And I think that there's a lot of different factors in how we define ourselves in terms of millennials. But then it's really amplified with the fact that a lot of the companies with the corporate structure, they don't care about the people. And I think generationally there are different ways of how they handle that. I think that the older generations, they have a more of a tolerant attitude. They're more able to withstand that type of treatment. That's just how those generations operate. But the millennials are a little bit different in the sense that whether you call it quote unquote failed parenting, we kind of grew up with feeling like we're the most special thing that has
Hmm.
ever come, that has ever landed on Earth. And we get everything that we want. We're treated in a distinct way where parents can get mad at teachers when the teachers aren't giving the proper grades or whatever it is. And so
Yeah.
we always get a lot of help growing up, feeling like we're always going to be protected because we're special. But then we get thrown into a corporate the workforce. No one's there to protect us, and so we have a huge shattering of self-image. And so a lot of that feeling of depression, anxiety, and stress is really correlated with just how we are with our beliefs and our values. And then the corporate works, the structure just shatters all of that. And so that's the reason why we are facing really a huge problem in how we see ourselves in terms of self-worth, our self-esteem, overall confidence. We're not at a good place right now.
That's interesting. I know, like you're going to make me say one of the classic things, like everybody gets a trophy, right? That's what you're referring to a little bit on that. But if we switch the roles and you kind of put yourself in a CHRO role, hiring manager role, a lot of people spend a lot of money on trying to get the culture fit right of the organization. But one of the things that you're referring to or inferring is the fact of it's not just driving a culture fit to try to create, what's the culture of this brand and how is it defined? But the realities are you've got to now start to address how do we bring in a workforce that's going to be aligned to the corporate culture, the brand, or do we need to almost look at how the brand's culture affects what soon's going to be 75% of the workforce? That's got to be an interesting dynamic because on one hand, if you're referring to the older generation or anything like that, the executive presence that's there now, they're like, this is our brand, this is how it's defined, and we will find the workforce that's attracted to it. And then you're working on the other side of the coin when you're trying to coach fellow millennials and say, you need to be real with yourself and adapt to the real world of, you're going to face different types of brands out there and find your right fit, that level of discovery. When you're coaching, how do you walk us through some of that when you're coaching a millennial on how to widen their perspective on trying to find what's a best match for them?
I think that it always starts with the basics. You have to go back to basics in terms of what business is. It's an interaction between human beings. It's
Mm,
about and so when you're in charge, you have to take care of the people that are under you. You have because they are the ones that are going to be dealing with the customers. And so if they're not going to be if they're not in the right mindset or if they feel off, that's going to reflect in your profits and your growth. And so
great point.
it starts with the basics of being a leader is about being a better human being and lifting others. It's very human centric, and that's part of the reason why it resonates so much with me with you is that you come from that same approach as well. And so
Yeah.
when I coach millennials because for whatever reason, leadership isn't taught in schools and business schools. It's very very practical skills and hard skills, but not a lot of soft skills are focused on.
Yep.
Whether it's empathy, truly understanding from the other person's living in their shoes. We aren't taught that, and then also learning to actually listen. What is actually listening? Are you able to repeat back to the other person and actually understand what they're trying to tell you? Because for me, I feel like it's very ironic that we live in a world full of self help, but not a lot of help others in terms of books of how to become more empathetic and how to develop your soft skills to be a better leader. It's really about focusing on you when really as a leader, you should be focusing on other people. It's a type of servitude that is very lacking. So, but that goes back to the basics. How can we become better human beings so then we can treat others so then that way they benefit from that, which also, it positively impacts the organization as well, because they are the ones that are going to be the face of the customers. They're going to be the ones working with the customers. That's going to bring in more business. And if you're not treating them well, that's probably going to be relayed onto the customers as well. And so that's number one, is the basics, and then number two, it's just really building on that. Learning more about communication, learning more about how to managing the emotional complexities of what you're going through, whether that's stress or anxiety. Learning how to be more resilient, not in a physical way, but more in a mental way, and learning and just building off of those basics. And so for me, it really, we're trying to separate. I feel that people separate business and what human interaction is. I think that it needs to be synergized because it complements each other.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. All the listeners here too are probably sucking all this up, David, because I think this is a tribe of people that believe in servant leadership, steward leadership, and definitely giving back to others and having others make each one of us better every single day. And this is a good example of that, is by listening to your perspective. And a lot of us are senior executives here in the tribe, and it causes us pause to make sure that are we truly when we say we love to take care of our people. Well, what does that really mean? And how are we truly looking at it from a human centric leading point of view? So when you refer to resilience and you refer to how they handle stress and anxiety and all of those things, how hard is it and we're really just painting your entire generation with a paintbrush. I get that, and I know that's difficult, but like for the millennials, how difficult is that for them to open their blinders a little bit and say, I do need to improve. I have a lower sense of resilience than potentially other generations. And how do I fix them? Do you find that in general, most of your peers are thirsting for that kind of information, or do you view yourself almost as a preacher and you got to get up somewhere and say, hey, listen, follow me because, I found a way to make you better? What's kind of the vibe?
That's a great question. I definitely don't view myself as a preacher. I hope to view myself as more of a coach, and kind of blending, a little bit of kind of getting the word out that there needs to be a change in leadership, and I think millennials have the wrong idea of what leadership is, because they get thrown into the workforce, and what they do experience is what they feel is the standard. And so that's kind of what I was relating to earlier on when I said that we are at a pivotal point, because if we don't kind of take it from a preaching stance, they're going to take what they learn that isn't effective in terms of helping businesses. They're going to keep that going, and we're only going to see the trend that's going to be affecting everybody in a negative way, whether it's depression, anxiety, stress, or even increasing the rates of suicide. It's really a mix for me. I want to really get the message out for millennials, and I also feel that millennials are also in a place of curiosity as to why they are feeling the way that they do. Because a lot of times when I talk to them, they put the blame on themselves. They put the blame that it's their fault that they're not fitting in. They put the blame on themselves that maybe how I think that I am, it's not good enough. So their self-worth and their self-esteem is really shattered because of what they experience in the corporate structure as well. And so they are thirsty, but they don't know exactly why, or they're not challenging the fact that leadership, it might be the leadership and it's not their fault. And so it's a little bit of a mix for me to be able to increase my reach as much as possible, to let other millennials know that, say, hey guys, you're not alone. We all feel this way, because it's not a generational problem. If every single one of us feels this way, there's something with leadership that has to change. And so it's more of directing it towards the people who are already in that leadership position to look at how they're approaching their practices. And a lot of the times you'll see that it's at the expense of the people, and it's whether it's millennials or Generation Zs, it really doesn't matter. It's just that right now we are in that position because we make up the majority of the workforce, whether it's entry level or a lower level position. And for some millennials, they are in a leadership executive position. But for the most part, we're the ones that are taking the heat for I guess the bad leadership practices that are going on right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's an interesting dynamic as you're speaking, because obviously I'm not in your generation. I'm not a millennial, and I can very easily see a lot of my peers, and in some ways even myself, going, "Okay, wait a second here. You're asking me to change my leadership styles, my leadership behaviors, my corporate brand." In order to make almost an entire generation of a workforce feel better, act better about themselves, and do all that. And I can see, and I'm sure you've experienced, right? I'm sure there's probably some natural pushback, right? There's probably a natural pushback from executives that are like, this is our brand, this is our culture. I have to be very careful about how much I'm going to concede to my workforce about how I want them to feel and act, because they should really start to assimilate into the corporate culture. So there's probably this, there is a little bit of a generational conflict happening, that natural. And I think that happens in every generation, right? When I talk to my dad, right, he walked to school uphill both ways in the snow, right? And all of those kind of things. And I needed to suck it up and just do my time until I learned different things and all that. So I'm sure there's a conflict that happens. But I will tell you, as I say those things, I'm generalizing that also, because one thing that I learned early on as a leader is, as I became a believer in human-centric leading, and in the end, the only way that you can truly lead a group of people is to understand them and to figure out what makes them tick, and to meet them halfway with this sense of compassion and empathy and understanding, so that you can help get your message across. It's a pretty crazy dynamic out there, David, right now.
Absolutely, and to kind of touch on your point too, one thing that my dad has taught me is that the only thing that's constant is change. And so for the people who are pushbacking, they're going to be the ones that unfortunately are going to suffer, because they're not willing to adapt to the different mindsets or the different mentalities of people entering the workforce. And just like if a certain technology comes into your industry that it disrupts you, you have to adapt in order to survive. And it's the same thing with how you treat your people. Maybe it worked for a certain group of people, but it's not working right now. And it really goes back to thinking about, as human beings, we are all social creatures. We all want to feel valued. We all want to feel heard and understood. And that's uniform across. It doesn't matter what the generation is. That's just how we all feel. It doesn't matter how we were brought up, but deep down, how we really are, who we really are, is that we all want to feel connected and on a deeper level. And that comes with, like what you said, is that understanding. But we don't have the skills right now, because it's all about being an authoritative leader and not choosing to be more empathetic and choosing to be more compassionate by listening and trying to understand and helping the people who are making up the majority of the workforce right now. And so it's really about adapting. And unfortunately, if they choose not to adapt, I mean, a lot of companies are already feeling the pains of what they call the quote unquote millennial problem.
Yeah, it is interesting that I think your strongest talking point, and something that I even took a note down, because it's a very simple perspective, but it absolutely is the truth, is that this workforce that's currently in the workplace today, the millennials that are there at the 35% level, they are the one more than likely that are closest to the client right now. They're closest to the customer. And if they are not happy, if they are not optimized and operating at their maximum capacity, it is absolutely going to be felt from the customer point of view.
Right.
that there's a disconnect. And I think that's such a strong reminder about the most important person in the organization is the entire person in the organization. It doesn't matter if it's the person sweeping the floor at 3 a.m. or the most highest ranking senior executive. Everybody counts and plays a role to be successful within that organization.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that it kind of touches on the mindset of someone coming into work to collect a paycheck versus someone coming to work because they actually love what they do. And you'll
Yeah.
know how they approach their work based on just that mentality alone.
There's also a huge danger of companies if there's a senior executive listening to this podcast a month from now and they're like, "Oh, I'm all in. I didn't realize I'm disconnected from my people. I'm going to change." There's a huge danger in over rotating also. Like not every place needs to be a Google or an Amazon, right? Does everybody need sleep pods? Does everybody need ping pong tables? Right? Is there a chance that these companies are going to go assume what a millennial generation needs and then just go crazy on it? And does that also, when you do something like that, when it's so outrageous that they think they're kowtowing to a generation, is there a danger there that they disconnect the generation also?
Yeah, and I think that I laughed because it kind of goes back to trying to solve problems with money, and that's
Yeah.
why there's a problem in itself, right? The
Yeah.
millennials, for the most part, they don't even know what they want because remember, they just feel like what leadership is. That is the standard. They don't know what real leadership can be, and so what they experience is what they consider to be normal. And so when their leaders ask them what they want, how can they provide feedback if they don't have the whole picture? And so whether it's bean bags or free food or ping pong tables, whatever it is, that's just the desperation from them as a possible alternative
Yep.
to make themselves feel better. It's maybe like, oh, maybe I'll enjoy work more if I can play ping pong on my work hours. But then after I'm done, my manager's gonna tell me that if I don't pick up my performance, I might not have a job next month. And then boom,
That's exactly right.
it completely negates the entire ping pong solution, right? And so you and I
Yep.
kind of talked a little bit earlier on where it's very equivocal to being in a strong relationship. A lot of the times, if
Hmm.
there's something there that needs to be fixed, you don't go buy chocolates and flowers to try to fix the problem. That's not that. It's very
That's right.
superficial. Yes, and so it comes down to, again, what is the basic human need is to be heard, to be seen or valued, or to be understood. And that is only being able to be done with compassion and empathy, truly listening to someone, really wanting to understand from their point of view, and then going from there. And so I think that a lot of companies, they're just going off of improper feedback from the millennials because the millennials, they don't have the entire picture of what real leadership should be.
So, David, I'm going to use your chocolate and flowers analogy. One of the things that that you write about is a lot of the clients that you have currently are they're tired of putting all their energy into like leadership workshops and seminars and therapy sessions and self-help things. When an organization is like, "Hey, I'm going to send you to this leadership seminar," or "Hey, you're going to do a 2-day retreat on X," is a lot of that from the corporate view back to your analogy of just chocolate and flowers?
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of that is, yes, it is a band-aid solution, as I call it. It's just to cover up, as maybe the other executives or the leaders, they think that, they need to go to a leadership workshop because they have no idea what they're doing. So it's almost like putting the blame on them, saying that you need to go to a leadership workshop to learn how to become better, when in reality, there's a little bit of ignorance in that because they're not seeing that it's really the environment as to which the millennials are in that is causing them to feel that way. It's not that they need to gain more practical skills or to learn more hard skills. That's not going to help them feel better and to perform better as well. They need to feel like the executives and the leaders care. So if I just told you, who's maybe not feeling very good, maybe going through a little bit of anxiety and stress about what they're doing, and I just told you, hey, you have this problem, go there and fix it. It's not sitting down with them and saying, hey, what do you need? What I can definitely sense that something is up. What do you need from me to help you do your job better? It's
Yeah.
taking accountability and responsibility as a leader to really fix whatever is going on with their life, because we're all human beings. We all have our personal life outside of work, and so as a leader, you have to be attuned to the people under your charge. And if people under your charge feel like they are cared for, and then they are heard, and they are understood, that is only going to reciprocate in terms of the performance that they're going to give you as well. So if you're just sending them off with with chocolates and flowers to a leadership workshop, that's not going to do anything. It's a band-aid fix.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And there's study after study now that has validated that the leadership development programs of the last 20 years have been a colossal failure. There's been no great advancement in in true cross-sectional leadership over the last 20 years, even though, right, corporations have spent billions on leadership development programs and have sent people off to all these various workshops. And at the end of the day, it just feels good, right? It just feels good. Well, I sent my team to the workshop, they should be able to communicate better, or they all came back and they have different colors associated with them. So now that they know what color they are, they can communicate better with other colors. And it just hasn't worked, because it hasn't gotten down to that, common denominator of what is true human-centric leading, what was the true connections, all of those kind of things.
Yeah, chocolates and flowers, like you said.
Chocolates and flowers, you bet. What is your opinion on, because this will be cross-generational, what is your opinion on people, when you talk about, looking at themselves inwardly and then also being able to understand others? Are you a believer in personality assessments or any of those kind of things to help a person better understand kind of what their makeup is, or what's your belief on those?
I think I think it's great to have that awareness, but I think that the issue nowadays is that we're just not treating each other well. And I think that it doesn't matter what your personality is; we can all just treat each other a little bit better. And it's just choosing to want to understand and choosing to be empathetic. And it's more about the action. It's not about It doesn't really matter what your personality type is. It's just really about maybe learning the skill of wanting, because it is a skill to be able to try to understand from someone's point of view, or to actually listen. It sounds so simple to just close your mouth and listen to the other person and try to actually hear what they're saying. It's a very tough skill that not a lot of people are able to do well. And so I think that I don't I think it's great to have that awareness, and to maybe have a little bit more of introspection of yourself as a person, and in maybe how well you work. But it to really thrive, we all just need to come together a little bit better, and we have to learn those skills of how to build the resiliency through community.
Yeah, I tell you, David, I think that's a great point, is that you can have all these skills, you can have all these sense of understanding, but you said it was actionable. It's the action of doing something about it that is the most important thing. And I agree with you, right? There's an old Army leadership saying that they say, be, know, and do. Be the person you want to be accountable for, yourself and others, know, having that knowledge of all of the things that's around you, and then do. It's that action, right? That final thing is action. It's a verb in all of that. And I think it's a great point. We kind of started this episode with talking about how there's such a high rate of burnout and stress and anxiety. You wrote a fascinating article here not too long ago that was on the 6 anchors to overcome stress and anxiety to become a fulfilled leader. Do you mind sharing with us what those 6 point of views are?
Yeah. So I wrote this article based on my own experience. So I was VP of development and commercialization for footwear. So I worked with ultra running was a huge customer of ours, but our history extends to K Swiss, to Brooks as well. And so a lot of the work put me in China. And I would say that for the last 6 years, every year, for half of the year, I was either in the metal tube, flying to see customers, or going to China to work. and working 16 hours plus a day, because during the daytime I'd be working with the North American customers, but then, as time change at
Ha.
night, I would have to be working with my Chinese team, and making sure that everything is according to schedule and whatever else. And so stress and anxiety is a huge understatement in terms of how I was feeling. And so I made this
Yep.
guide, to provide a little bit of what I've learned based on that, with working with my mentor as well. And so the first anchor is really just focusing on your own development, because one of the biggest misconceptions is, when you focus too much on yourself, it's considered selfish. But I'm not saying that you should only be thinking of yourself. You should be thinking of developing yourself in order to help others. And in that sense, it is not selfish, because you're trying to become better yourself, so then you can better serve others as well. And so it's the analogy that I use is, imagine being a professional football player, and you're never practicing by yourself to be better in terms of your speed, your agility, your strength, or even going to watch game tapes to see how you can be better tactically as well. And then you only relied on your team practices to become better. You, by no means would you ever become a Super Bowl champion. So you have to work on yourself individually, and then you would amplify that through your teamwork in order to become champions. And so it starts off with you. So
Yeah,
that is
amen
number
to
one.
that. And you put your mask on first before you help others,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. I've heard that many times on my flights to China. So
That's right. I figured
very,
you'd like
very,
that one.
yeah. And so then number two, I talk about investing in your communication skills. And so one of the jarring statistics of why the number one and number two stresses of millennials is family related and work related. And the common denominator between those two is lack of communication. And
Wow.
so being able to improve your communication skill not only benefits your own relationships at home or with your coworkers or whatever else, but also benefits just your overall work mentality, being able to communicate what you need to in terms of a presentation, or whether it's a direct report or whatever it is. This is a skill that is absolutely essential to cover the number one and the number two stressors that millennials feel. It doesn't happen overnight, but acknowledging that communication is an ever-changing beast. It will always put you in the right mindset to always adapt to that dynamic uncertainty, because you always have to know that there's no one right way to communicate, but you can always become better at it. It's kind of like fitness.
Love it.
You never just stop, right? Because if your goal is to lose 20 pounds, you get there. You don't. It's the finish line is a lifestyle, right?
That's right.
So communication, it works in the same way as well. And it only benefits how you are in your workspace, but also it benefits you in your personal life as well. So
That's a great call out. That's a great call out.
And then, so moving on to number three, it's, stop trying to find time, make time. So this kind of speaks to your personal language. Your own language sets the precedent of what will happen afterwards. Language is extremely powerful. And so when you say that, I'm trying to find time, you will probably lack the effort to actually make the time. So when you tell yourself that I'm going to make time for something, you're actually going to make time for it. So this just touches on the importance of language, changing your mindset and your approach to making it become more purposeful and intentional through the action. That will actually make sure that how you speak to yourself turns into actionable things that you actually finish the things on your to-do list, or you finish the things that your direct report tells you that you need to get done. So it's all about really controlling and changing your tone and your language to yourself. So that's what number three touches on.
Words matter.
Words matter. Exactly. So number four, learning to unplug. So disconnecting is one of the most important things. And I think that we utilize technology in a very, very unhealthy way, whether that's social media or being able to work remotely. And I think that, COVID has really touched on a nerve in terms of exacerbating the fact that people feel like they need to be working all the time, because now working, their office is their home, so there's no physical separation to say that, like, I'm going to be driving to work and that's where my work will be done. Once I leave my work, work is done. I shut off my work. But now we sit at home and there's no set hours. And so learning to unplug means that you are always going to be feeling stress or anxiety or pressure unless you know how to actually disconnect. And so it's learning about proper time management, learning to be productive and efficient during the hours that you're supposed to be working, and then learning to actually unplug and relax after you're done with your work. And that's actually part of what resilience is. Resiliency isn't about learning how to endure, it's learning how to recharge. It's really about disconnecting, really just allowing yourself to just relax. And then a lot of studies have shown that when you're in a state of zen, that's where creativity and innovation actually happens. When your brain is so consciously embedded in stress and anxiety, that's what you focus on. And these subconscious innovations or creations that just sit in the back of your head, they never come to fruition. And so you've probably experienced something like that when you're taking a shower, and then something magically happens. Where it's like, oh my God, that's what I needed to do while you're taking a shower or whatever it is. And so that's part of the reason why as well.
Yeah, I will tell you, David, that this by far is a great foot stopper for sure. I learned early on when I was a senior executive in the military, I was so proud that my calendar was in 15-minute increments because it showed how busy I was, and it was jam-packed, dawn, dawn to dusk kind of thing. And, just always there, always working. I'm so proud of, look how important I was. And it wasn't until after I left that position and went to another, and I had my boss, a great leader, remind me that white space is a leader's imperative. It is a leadership imperative to create white space, because without white space, you will never truly be a great leader. And it is a fantastic reminder for your anchor 4 there that white space is a leadership imperative. You got to have it.
That's a great label on that too. Yes, I cannot agree with you more on that for sure. And so, for the next one, anchor 5, I just talked about the overall well-being. So never forget about your overall well-being. And that's just, the basics of moving often, making sure that your nutrition is on point, that you take time for, mental relaxation and peace through meditation or sleep, whatever it is. And to make sure that you make this a priority every single day. And so, you can see this in athletes. For athletes who don't take their recovery seriously, they're the ones who are injured more. For athletes that focus on the ice baths, for athletes that focus on taking a day off, doing whatever they need to do, doing more yoga, they're the ones who are the high performers. And so taking that analogy into your business, that's the exact same thing, whether it's physical or mental. You need to make sure that you take care of yourself. Otherwise, you're never going to be a great leader because you're always going to be a step behind.
Yeah, most NFL teams now even have sleep specialists on staff.
Yes.
Because they've realized the importance of that high level of athleticism is directly related to how the quality of your sleep is.
Exactly. The better the recovery, the better the athlete. Absolutely.
You bet.
And then the very last one is just working with someone who can give you the outside eyes perspective and help give you that guidance. And so it's just really about, finding someone who's been through what you've been through, being able to give you the wisdom, share the experiences on whether it's overcoming, the stress and the anxiety, or, what other practical skills that you can learn how to build trusting teams, or it's really just finding someone who's been through that, and then you're really listening to them in terms of the guidance. And then that way you'll save a lot of sanity and also a lot of money just listening to the things that they can teach you. And a lot of the times they're extremely valuable. And that's one of the takeaways that I've had with my own mentor as well.
David, these 6 anchors are gold. They really are. These are a fantastic roadmap to truly being a better person. And to your point very early on in this podcast, that if you are a better person, you will be a better employee, you will be a better leader, you'll be a better servant, you'll be a better peer. all of those things that it takes just to be that holistic person is kind of the secret sauce boiled down to 6 key anchor points. Thank you for that, because that's awesome.
Absolutely.
And I think that is something, we were talking about, you're not necessarily going to be a preacher, but that's some gospel to spread right there. That's some good stuff for sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So David, thanks for giving us some insight into understanding that there is a generational dynamic. A lot of leaders will say, I don't care what generations you are in, I'm just going to, run my organization this way. And, it might be a bunch of mumbo jumbo if you define yourself generationally, but it's a real thing. And it is something to be aware of. And all good leaders need to have this level of self-awareness that you have really talked about today. I think it is invaluable for all of our listeners to take stock of these wise words that you have given us. And, I love something else that you have said in some of your articles about how you build that unbreakable mindset. Because with that unbreakable mindset, you're able to navigate both your internal and external challenges. And with that, that's going to breed success. So, David, I can't thank you enough for giving us your point of view today, making the tribe better. And I'd love to leave it open for any last thoughts from you.
I'm very happy that I was able to just have a great conversation with you, honestly. And sometimes when you start speaking, it was very hard for me to stop word vomiting, because I'm so passionate about just talking about this topic. And I hope that this is able to resonate with your listeners, and that hopefully that brings value. And and I'm glad that I could join this, because this is a one hell of a movement.
Awesome. David, thanks a lot. You're gonna allow the tribe to be accountable and stay consistent and experience those transformational results that you have showed that we could experience by just following these key fundamentals. So thanks again for your time, David. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for joining our leadership movement this week, talking to David about building an unbreakable mindset to navigate all the internal and external challenges, and his 6 anchors was my takeaway for today. Don't forget, our show notes are posted on the website with key leader takeaways. Be sure to subscribe and tell a friend so we can continue to build the tribe. Until next time, remember that iron sharpens iron. Make yourself and others around you better every single day.